Is India's highest court inadvertently or perhaps systematically displaying bias against Hindu causes while showing greater sensitivity to our other religious groups? When Muslim women approached the court demanding equal access to mosques, the case failed against similar traction or seriousness. Even after 6 years, selective interpretations of Article 25 and 26. Namaskar, I welcome you to the digital media of Uday India, myself Deepak Kumar Rath. And today in Bhartiyata Ka Sankhanath, I will speak whether the Indian judiciary failing the Hindu community, because recent judicial trends raise concerns about inconsistency, selective activism, and cultural insensitivity in Indian courts. The Indian judiciary has long been upheld as the guardian of the constitution, a neutral arbiter of justice, and a beacon of fairness. Yet, over the years, a pattern of perceived judicial inconsistency, particularly in matters involving Hindu religious rights and institutions, has led to growing concern and mistrust among large sections of the Hindu community. From differential treatment of religious petitions to selective urgency in hearings, the Supreme Court's recent conduct has raised an uncomfortable question. Is India's highest court inadvertently or perhaps systematically displaying bias against Hindu causes while showing greater sensitivity to our other religious groups? Unequal reactions to Waqf amendments. A striking example lies in the contrasting judicial responses to the amendments in the Waqf Act. When the Congress government introduced the Waqf Amendment Act in 2013, Hindu petitioners challenged it, calling it unconstitutional and discriminatory. However, the Supreme Court refused to hear the plea and asked them to approach the High Court. The response was by many accounts dismissive. Fast forward to 2025, the BJP government introduced a new amendment aimed at reforming the same Waqf law. This time, Muslim petitioners opposed it. Yet, unlike in 2013, the Supreme Court not only admitted the case directly, but also gave it urgent priority. And such unequal treatment in procedure handling erodes public confidence. Shouldn't all citizens be granted the same access and urgency irrespective of their religion? It's a question. Double standards in religious rights. This inconsistency is not limited to Waqf-related issues. In the Ram Janmabhoomi case, Hindu petitioners were required to present extensive historical and archaeological proof, including ancient scriptures, maps, and artifacts, to support their claim. Contrast this with the current hearings on the Waqf Act, where the court has shown sympathy toward Muslim sides' inability to produce centuries-old documentation for mosques and dargahs. Similarly, in the Sabarimala case in 2018, the Supreme Court struck down an age-old Hindu temple tradition that restricted the entry of women in menstruating age, citing gender discrimination. However, when Muslim women approached the court demanding equal access to mosques, the case failed against similar traction or seriousness. Even after 6 years, selective interpretations of Article 25 and 26. Article 25 guarantees the freedom to practice religion, while Article 26 gives religious denominations the right to manage their own affairs. Over the years, the court had ruled in several cases. A.S. Narayan Destulu in 1996, N. Adityan in 2002, and Sesmal in 1972 that the administration of religious institutions is a secular function and should not discriminate based on caste or religion. Yet when it comes to appointments in Hindu temples, the judiciary insists on inclusivity. When a similar issue arises regarding the work board, a managerial body, the same court appears to protect religious exclusivity. Why should principles differ based on religion? Should not the constitutional standards apply equality to all? Temples under control, mosques and churches free. Another long-standing grievance is the state control over Hindu temples. Across various states, temple revenues are collected and utilized by the government, often for secular purposes, while mosques and churches enjoy complete administrative autonomy. For more than a decade, Hindu groups have pleaded for parity in this matter, but the Supreme Court has routinely directed them to high courts, offering no substantial relief. The inconsistency depends with issues like animal sacrifice. In 2019 and 2014, courts proactively banned animal sacrifice in Hindu rituals. Yet, during Bakra Eid, the judiciary remains conspicuously silent. The difference in judicial activism is hard to ignore now. The cultural disconnect, if you will see, Western secularism in Indian context, one of the core problems appear to be a fundamental misunderstanding or misapplication of secularism in the Indian context. The Western model of secularism, rooted in European Christian history, advocates for a rigid separation between church and state. This model was born out of centuries of conflict between religious and temporal powers in Europe. India, however, had a different civilization trajectory. Indian kings, be they Hindu, Buddhist or Jain, supported temples of multiple sects. Saivite rulers donated Vaishnavite temples and vice versa. The state was never seen as separate from dharma, righteous duty. As Chanakya said, Sikhya moolam dharma, dharmasya moolam artha, dharmasya moolam artha. Happiness stems from dharma and dharma is rooted in prosperity. The attempt to force fit a Western idea of secularism into a deeply pluralistic and spiritually integrated society like India has led to unintended consequences, among them a judiciary that is sometimes culturally illiterate or turned deaf to Hindu traditions. The path forward, you will see, India's judiciary must introspect. It must strive to uphold equal protection under the law in both letter and spirit, free from ideological influence or religious appeasement. The goal is not to tilt the scales in favor of any community, but to restore balance, ensure consistency, and reaffirm faith in the institution. Justice must not only be done but must also be seen to be done. That's all for today. Stay tuned with Uday India and subscribe to Uday India. That's all for today.